lot of times people try to remove pain from their organization. That's not what people want.
He is the co-founder and CEO of New Reach Education. It's an education tech platform that produces brands that you might already follow. Subto, AstroFlipping, and credit stacking.
Being a small company, you're people focused, right? So when you need to solve a problem, you look at the people you have in the roster and you move them around to solve your problem. Yeah. When you're really big, you're position focused.
What were some of your struggles when you first started your own company? Because it's different than working for somebody.
I think one of the big things is,
if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, of course you're in sales because you're always trying to get your employees to catch the vision of where you want to go with the company.
If you're coming from being a salesperson, you're probably pretty good at casting vision, and you're pretty good at one of the hardest things for anyone starting a company where you need to employ people, and that's...
All right, Jeremy Miner, welcome back to Closers or Losers. Jeremy Miner, founder of Seventh Level. I am here with the CEO and co-founder of New Reach and KeyGlee.
You even said it correctly.
It's the first time. Josiah Grimes, and let me give this man a proper introduction. So I wrote down some things here. There's a lot about this guy, but I just want to go over a few important things. So he is the co-founder and CEO of New Reach Education. It's an education tech platform that produces brands that you might already follow, such as Subto, AstroFlipping, and credit stacking. He's also the co-founder and chairman of KeyGlee, one of the world's largest real estate wholesalers with over 100 locations in the US. He also serves as director for Purpose Founder, which is focused on Christian evangelism through digital media, and he's also an investor in other industries such as AI, data, title, education, e-commerce, and he has red hair.
Boom.
Red hair,
Nicely
man.
done.
He has red hair. Yes. So, Josiah, so welcome to the show. We're doing this in Cancun, Mexico. We're here at the Russell Brunson Unlock the Secrets in Paradise event. There's about 500 entrepreneurs. You and I are in the Atlas group. I think there's about 15 companies, and we get to share ideas of what maybe we're trials we have in our businesses, and we help each other, get to new levels and new things that we're doing. So let's start first about this education company. Why did you start New Reach, and who did you start it for?
Oh, great question, man. Also, you can tell that we are legitimately in Cancun because we're both kind of sweating.
Yes, it's very humid
hot
here.
Yeah.
even in this business center where we're shooting this podcast, it's still hot. We're still melting. It's like a sauna.
That's awesome. So New Reach. Starting New Reach, basically, so we had KeyGlee, right? And we were doing really well. I remember there was 1 month we did, we were wholesaling property, right? Yeah. And 1 month we did like 82 deals in a month.
Wow, that's a lot.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. And that's a lot. I remember just being like, there's a lot of educations out there, and a lot of those educations, it's like teaching people how to get to 1 or 2 deals, or a really common thing also is they're really good at sales. Like the practitioner is really good at sales, really good at marketing, but maybe isn't so great at actually real estate or the fulfillment side. Okay. And so there's a little bit of a gap there. And so we just had a lot of people that were like, hey man, can you teach me real estate, right? Yeah. Yeah. We're like, well, sure. And so you do that onesie twosies and you're like, all right, I'm regurgitating a lot of the same information here. Sure. And I was like, why don't we make this into a more formalized,
like a training course.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was the birth of AstroFlipping. Okay. That you can ask Nick Fisher why it's called AstroFlipping. Okay.
I like that. Why is it called? And here's the reason why I brought Josiah on, because you're a salesperson watching us right now, or maybe you're a coach or a consultant, or maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you own another business. You could be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company on this show, but you're always looking for ways to invest your money. And I find that, when I was in the trenches as a salesperson, at least at the companies I work for, we weren't really educated on, hey, we're making money, we're making commissions. How do we invest that? So it's kind of like we were left on our own to, we're going to put it in a 401k. We're going to do all the traditional stuff. And it took me about 10, 12 years of just being around other, entrepreneurs to really realize I needed to diversify and get into real estate myself. So that's why I really wanted you on the show, because a lot of these salespeople, this is, you want to listen to this right now, is when you learn how to sell more, you obviously make more commissions, you get a higher base, whatever industry you're in. But what are you going to do with that money? And we want to bring in experts in different things, even such as like financial investing, where maybe you could look at their materials and be like, hey, I need to learn how to invest in real estate. Like I'm making this cash, I don't want to spend it every month and go broke. I need to invest it somewhere. So you started this education. What problems do you feel like you really solve for your potential customers?
That's a great question, man. And so now we've got a few brands that focus on different things, right, within the real estate niche and even outside of that.
Yeah.
So they all kind of solve different niche problems, right?
Well, let's talk about like Subto, Pace Morby.
Yeah, totally. Subto, I mean, it just solves all the problems, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, kind of, in all reality. So
Sure.
Subto does a really phenomenal job, like you were talking about. We get a lot of people that are like, hey, I'm making a lot of money over here. How do I parlay that into investments that are really going to perform well for me, right? And so we get a lot of people that come in for that.
Okay.
And it shows them basically like, hey, these are the types of assets you want to buy, when you want to buy them, how you want to buy them.
Yeah.
Subto is also really great because it goes in depth. You don't just get, like some courses are very like unifocused.
Boring.
I've
been through a few of them.
So true.
I've been through a few of them.
So true, dude. But unifocus, where it's like, hey, this will teach you how to fix and flip, or this will teach you how to wholesale, or this will teach you how to, do Airbnb.
Yeah.
And Subto really does, it really does the full breadth of, hey, we're going to teach you how to punch into each of these, and based on who you are and your needs, you're gonna have a different path.
Yeah.
You're gonna use a little bit of this, a little bit of this.
Yeah.
And then it does a really nice job. I mean, in Pace. Pace is kind of like the
figurehead,
yeah. And my partner in the brand, and just an awesome human being.
Yeah.
And he's really a master, man. Like from knowing the details of the different acquisition strategies, and has figured out a lot of stuff that like you look on YouTube, someone's like, oh yeah, you can't do that or whatever. But he's like, you absolutely can do it. You can just only do it in these 37 states, and you can do it this way with these different attorneys with this paperwork.
Well, the whole Subto thing was kind of a new thing for me when I first saw that. And this is what I want to talk to you about. But before everybody looks at you, the CEO of this very large company. You guys do from what I understand, 9 figures plus a year. But can you tell us maybe a little bit of your background? Because when we were eating dinner the other night, you were like, yeah, 10, 12 years ago I was an intern. I'm like, what? You were an intern 10 or 12 years ago, and now you're running this entire company you founded? So walk us back to the internship days.
Yeah, totally. I think the other part of that is like, I wasn't even that good of an intern.
You weren't even.
I was just an intern.
You were just an intern.
Yeah, I remember. I remember. So I interned with Cody Sperber.
Yeah.
Right.
Big real estate guy. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I remember, sitting in the office, and we were in this office on the Mill Avenue office, right? And I remember sitting in one of the offices. It's like the middle of the day, and I knew I hadn't done anything for like 2 hours, and I was just like, man, I'm a terrible employee. I'm
gonna get fired as intern.
Cody gave me enough grace there, and I got the opportunity to learn from him, from Ivan, Matt, other guys.
So this is like 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, 10.
So you're talking like 2014, 2013, 2012.
Yeah, right in there.
So you're just you're still in college there, or just graduated?
Yeah,
or?
So would have been still in college.
Okay.
Still in college, and then kind of worked.
So you started getting around Cody and these other guys, and you're like, hey, I want to, like, what happened? Because most interns would just kind of do the job and go off and get a real job. Yeah, totally. But what caused you to be like, hey, I want to learn what these guys are doing?
Yeah. Well, it was actually a really cool vantage point because he was just starting Clever Investor, and so like I got to see that start from zero to grow and what that looked like, and I think it was basically like I went from being an intern to then I was like, okay, here's a job, and then from a job it's like you get to speak on, like, now we're doing some real estate transactions. Cody walked me through my first deal, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then you gotta say, okay, well, now you're actually pretty good at real estate. You can talk from stage, you can start to whatever. And so then it was like there was this pivot point where I looked around. I was like, wait, I'm actually pretty good at all this stuff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like
I don't need to be the intern anymore.
Yeah. A little bit though.
Cody, I'm not a good intern. Why don't you hire somebody else anyway?
Seriously. But yeah, man. And so then we ended up. Cody, me, and another guy ended up starting a real estate company, a separate real estate company, where we did predominantly wholesale real estate, some fix and flips, like 1 or 2 development projects. Okay. And so that was the first time that I'm like, yeah, I got 5 employees.
You tasted the entrepreneurship. You started getting some employees. Okay. Yep. What were some of your? I think this is important to know because we have a lot of salespeople on here that might be thinking like, hey, I'm going to learn how to sell, and then maybe I'll start my own thing. They could be thinking that. So if that's you, pay attention. But what were some of your struggles when you first started your own company? Because it's different than working for somebody.
Totally
a lot
different, bro. Yeah, it's totally different. I think one of the big things is the recruitment of other employees, right, and then the management of them. So if you were a manager in your previous position, you've got a little bit of experience on like, okay, cool, I need to be democratic here and authoritative here. This is how I have to cast vision, right?
Yeah.
And so you probably have some experience there. If you're coming from being a salesperson, you're probably pretty good at casting vision, and you're pretty good at one of the hardest things for anyone starting a company where you need to employ people, right? And that's getting people to work for you. Yeah. Right. Because if you're in your living room and you're like, yeah, come work for my company. Like I remember like when I was first interviewing people like for KeyGlee, it'd be like, meet me at Coffee Rush, you know, for the interview. Or like I'd go meet them at a coffee shop. Right. And then it's like, you know, we're talking through where they're going to be working from, and like it was my living room. You know what I mean? So like you literally
you're gonna move into my house.
You're gonna move into my house to work until the HOA kicked us out or whatever, right? But like you have to be willing, you have to be able to sell the vision, a grand and more interesting enough vision that, you know, it, just like with sales, it's like you're talking to the individual. What are their goals? What do they want to do, right? Yeah. And once you figure that out and you know what your vision is, you can attach the two, so that they accomplish their vision within the greater vision of the company.
Well, I think it's so true. You know, a leader's responsibility is to. That's why we say, like, if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, of course you're in sales because you're always trying to get your employees to catch the vision of where you want to go with the company, right? And that's. You're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others. So your communication skills are vital if you run a business, let alone sell. Totally. I want to talk about you've got a really big team at New Reach. How many employees do you guys have?
I think we're a couple hundred, something like that.
You're well over 200. Yeah, I think that's what somebody told me. So I even met your former CEO Curtis Weeks, amazing guy, like brilliant guy. I met him at one of the last events. And I still remember it. We're all sitting there. There's like 15 companies there. We're in this like little shape here with Russell Brunson up on stage, and we all have to get up there and present something about kind of what we do to maybe help everybody else. And Curtis gets up there and he's like, "All right, I prepared this manual for you like this morning around from 3 to 5, and it's like this thick. It's like 180 pages." And I'm like, wait a minute, this guy like did all this, and like it was so deep. I opened it up. It wasn't like just a bunch of pictures and 7 words. It was like, you know, like small print, like all the way down manual on like how to like build out a team and build out culture. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's like legit. Like this guy really is a great operator. So how do you find people like that? How have you been able to find people like that to help the business really grow?
Great question, man. So some of that is based on where your company is. Like it'd be very hard to hire someone like Curtis into your company if you've got 10 employees, right?
Yeah, sure.
Even if you have 30, you got like 30 employees, like still. Yeah. And the other thing too is you see like a lot of title bloat in small companies.
I know, I've seen that. Oh, he's the chief marketing officer and they have 7 employees. Yeah, I'm like, you don't need a chief marketing officer when you only have 7 employees. You can have maybe a director of marketing. Yeah. But before you have like C-suite executives, to me, you have to have at least probably 100 employees before you kind of get to that level.
100%, where that's what they would truly
around that range, yeah.
With that, you know, a lot of times we reward people that are taking a bet on us with a C-suite title, even though, you know, like really, we have a tiny company.
They might not be qualified.
And you're gonna have to walk that back at some point in the future, probably, because they probably won't be able to handle, you know, having 40 indirect reports and 8 direct reports or whatever, right? Yeah. But you can, sometimes we still reward people like that, right? So anyhow, with that,
depends on if they grow with the company and learn how to do that. Because I think in the very beginning, at least what we did at 7th Level, the first couple of years, we were like throwing bodies into places that we were going so fast. We were just like, oh, you're average at sales. You kind of have an analytical mind. Maybe you'd be good at operations. Let's make them the VP of operations. Totally. And they'd never done that, right? But it's like you grow so fast, right? You have to throw a body in there. But you're right. As you get to a certain level, you have more financial resources, you have more profitability of the company, and then you can go out and hire somebody like Curtis Weeks or something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like 2 things. Like being a small company, you're people focused, right? So when you need to solve a problem, you look at the people you have in the roster and you move them around to solve your problem. Yeah. When you're really big, you're position focused. So you say, I need to solve this problem. What positions do I need? Yes. Right? And those are 2 different things. And so whereas your positions are really mercurial when you're a small company, they become very more hard and fast when you're a big company. I think the other thing for hiring top talent, so the number one predictor of success, or the number one predictor of job success, luckily, this is not for entrepreneurs, but in general job success, the number one predictor is IQ, which is super lame. You know what I mean? It's like, I wish
Sure.
it was something. I wish it was like,
something else.
yeah, like, having red hair or something. But
Right.
Apparently it's IQ.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's hard work, right?
Okay, yeah.
And I think so. You're looking for cognitive ability, right? Like if you've got a team of 10 and everyone goes to one person, right, for their questions, you're like, okay, that person is has probably the most fluid or crystallized intelligence and is able to solve the problems. Sure. That person's the manager.
Yeah.
It's also why you shouldn't hire in candlesticks. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people hire, like this person is their director of ops, and then they're like, they need an assistant. It's like, no, hold on, right? Or it's this is my EA, and then my EA needs an assistant. It's like, all that does is create a candlestick. Right. And in all reality, you probably should hire in next to them until you've got 5 people on that team. Then you choose who the actual manager should assign.
That's valid.
But yeah, the last thing on hiring, dude, is just you need to see them actually do the work you want them to do.
Yeah.
Right. So don't say, hey, how good are you at media buying?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's an account.
Yeah.
Log in. Tell me what you see.
Yeah.
Right. What would you change?
Yeah.
Right. Now I want you to actually buy media for 2 days.
Yeah.
You're gonna actually know
a little bit of a test.
Yeah.
It's almost like how the I always pay attention to like the NFL and how the coaches and teams pick players for the draft. Like they'll bring them in there like a quarterback, and they won't be like, how good are you? Or like, just watching their film, like they'll get up on the board and they'll be like, hey, draw out what you would do in this scenario, or run this play for us in your mind. So they see their ability to be able to shift and make decisions on the fly, and they kind of test them that way. I think that's very unique. That's a good point.
Yeah, you don't care what the person says, like how they answer your questions.
Right.
Are you good at this? Doesn't tell you anything.
They're not going to say no. No, I'm not very good at media buying, but you're trying to hire me as a media buyer. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. So this is so as you grow and you scale, you have more cash flow to bring in higher quality talent. When I had my corporate career with Vivint, in those days, as they grew, the first 5-6 years, they would just bring in higher caliber people that had already done the thing that they wanted to do. Yes. So they could bring in a COO of a Fortune 1000 company that had already scaled that company to that level. They didn't, make their assistant the COO that might not have been qualified for that because they'd never done it, right? So, okay, so I want to talk about how you build team culture, because when I walked into your offices there in Tempe to do some training with some of your sales team, I noticed that I noticed things. I pick up on facial expressions and body language, and people, for the most part, they seem pretty happy. They seem pretty good. They seem pretty happy. They were like very welcoming. It's like everybody had a smile on their face. There was no like, this sucks to be here looks. I can tell by that. But it was all positive. So how do you build that culture? Because you got 200 plus employees, and how many do you have in that office? You got it has to be over 100.
You might have 100 and something in the office.
In the office. So how do you build that culture where, let's say you have 60% of your people in house, and then you've got another 30-40% that are virtual? That's not easy.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I would say there's probably a few things that I would drill down on, right? Yeah. I'll try to be really fast with these. Like there's a difference between, so there's like positive, negative, and cynical, right? A cynical person, you can do something really nice and they still see it as being somehow self-serving for you, right? Yeah. So like, you flip out, like you flip you used to have 7-Ups in the fridge and now you have Gatorades, right? And they're like, why they switched, like they talking to their team member, like, why they switched that out? It's because they knew we love 7-Up. So they switched it to Gatorade, right? You're like, come on, bro, like. Conspiracy theorists, right?
That's what we vote on on the board.
Yes. So anyhow,
like we save money on soda.
Yeah. So cynical people, like you got to get rid of them, right? They're going to bring your team down 30% performance. So like even if you have a positive person, it's not going to offset a cynical person.
True.
So look for if they're wearing the crap colored lenses, we love them to death. They got to go, right? A negative person, that's okay. Like you can give feedback. That's all good. But if everything is somehow self-serving for someone else, you got to let them go. Yeah. So that's one. The other thing is core values. You want to set your core values, and then there needs to be a through line on their performance reviews. Yeah. And you need to touch on those core values consistently. Okay. And then they get rated on those core values in their performance review. So it's all the way through the organization. Okay. You should design your core values based on your top performers and what leads your organization to be successful. Sure. So I'd say those two are super easy. The last one that I'll say is a lot of times people try to remove pain from their organization, like hard things. They think that that's going to make culture better. That's not what people want. Yeah. Right. People want to be a part of something that's story worthy, that's worth enduring pain to achieve.
They want a little bit of a challenge. Is that what you're saying?
They want a challenge.
With what they're doing.
But they want to know that what they're accomplishing is worth the difficulty. So if they believe in your vision, right, they're more than happy to endure pain. And in fact, it brings them alive. Yeah.
Right? It's more than just a paycheck. Because if they're just there for the money, they won't stay there long term. Somebody will offer them some other package that's better, maybe a new startup, some promises that maybe they can't fulfill, and they'll feel like the grass is on their side. But if they're bought into the company's vision of where you're going, they're part of that process, and they want to be part of that community and that almost tribe, right? As human beings, we want to belong to something in a tribe. So that's how you build culture. Now, I think one unique thing that you guys do that I don't know how you do it, but with New Reach, you manage these education brands. So you got like Pace Morby, you've got Jamil, you got the credit stacking, you got the AstroFlipping. There's like 10 that I saw on the website. You have the bookkeeping, all that stuff. How do you manage? Because you're talking about most brands like that, these brand ambassadors, they're more A-type for the most part. But sometimes we have egos and stuff like that. So how do you manage like 9 or 10 different brands with 9 or 10 different egos?
Good question.
And ego's not a bad thing. That's we all have an ego to some sort. But as a business owner, especially a brand ambassador or influencer, sometimes I've noticed, not all, but they're A-types. So how do you do that?
Well, look. So part of that is just luckily we've been super blessed with awesome. We call them brand visionaries, but essentially partners in the brand, right? Yeah. And so they've that has been amazing. What we do is we have a brand director. And that is also kind of like it's not an account manager because it's a partnership, right? Yeah. But that is the main point of contact. There's a singular point of contact for the brand visionary to interact with. Yeah. But that person has a lot of power, right? Because they're a brand director. Yeah. So they actually can accomplish things. Okay. And then so where we're really blessed is we have really smart. The partners that we bring into these brands really are experts.
They're really experts in their field. They get tens of thousands of hours of knowledge.
Yeah, and so when they're casting vision or they're saying, hey, I think this would be really cool, like by and large, those are really good ideas. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, like Pace's stuff, Jamil's stuff, like it's just
great stuff.
Insane, right? Yeah. And so, so good. And so that makes it a joy, right? It makes those relationships really easy.
So you have a brand director that kind of manages all 10 brands?
There's a brand director for each brand.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. I was like, man, that's a big job managing 10 brands like that. Some of those are pretty big brands. Okay, so you got a brand director for each one, and what do they do with like a Pace or Jamil on a daily basis? Like, what do they do
on a daily basis? Yeah. So basically it's it's pretty constant communication, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also dependent on the brand visionary, dependent on what they need, what cadence they like to receive information in. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's bi-weekly, sometimes that's 3 times a day, sometimes that's once a week.
Sure, right.
It depends on, it also depends on how much is going on in the brand, right? So that cadence looks like a lot of, communication both ways. Yeah. Updating on and it's really dependent on the brand visionary.
And then how do you do it? Because you've got a lot of your brands are in like kind of the real estate niche. So how do you do that? Because some people are like, well, those are competing brands. So how do you have all these brands and then some would say like kind of compete?
Yeah, no, good question, man. So we look to make sure we're not going to see more than 10% cannibalization on our front end cold traffic. Yeah. So that's one of the major tests. But honestly, having an ecosystem of shoulder niches is really phenomenal because we own all the traffic, right? And so they come into this and we're like, oh, this person actually also really needs this. And so they can be served over here. Right?
So you guys can kind of even share lists sometimes with like different promotions and stuff?
Yeah, it's a really good idea. We run the brands siloed so that this brand's going to pay this brand an affiliate, right? Yeah, right. But we can serve the individuals much better because we know where they were at over here when they come over here. And so this team sits next to this team. They use the same system. So we have the notes. It's like, okay, cool. This is where they were at in their journey over here. Right. And so they need this, and this over here.
So, so like if a brand comes in that let's say is doing, 20% of what Pace's brand does, you can take Pace's brand and stack it up with this brand and be like, hey, we did this for this, and this. It really worked for Pace. We can implement the same procedures and systems and maybe marketing for this brand?
We don't
There's going to be
we
tweaks.
We don't always do
but,
that. So it's more like on a student level, right? So like the student is transferring from over here. We know where they were at on sub 2. They achieved this much success in sub 2. So then when they come into this brand, which is maybe on more heavily focused on, we'll say like multifamily
or something.
We know that they're already at this level, and so it's a continuous conversation.
Yeah.
From like sales, marketing, that type of stuff. So you can align your organization like mission aligned or function aligned, right? Yeah. And so we've tried both, right? And it's right now it's kind of this hybrid or bifurcated approach, right?
Okay.
We've got some mission-based teams, and then we've got some functionally aligned teams. Like marketing should be functionally aligned, right? So you've got your growth team, your copy team, right? Your
videographers, your editors, all
your
that
creative,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's functionally aligned, and it allows you to prioritize across all brands.
Right.
But also you get your best people on each brand, right?
I think that's good because let's say if I'm a brand ambassador like myself, and let's say I'm doing a deal with you guys, I'd be like, well, who am I going to get? Am I going to get the C team or am I going to get the A team? So that's really valid.
The thing and then missionally aligned is like sales, right? Like I don't want guys and gals selling 4 different courses. I want you selling one thing and you master it.
Yeah.
Right?
So this team's going to sell for sub 2. This team's going to sell for Gator lending. This team's going to sell for credit stacking.
Exactly.
So they're focused on that. They're not just randomly selling anybody's course.
Yeah. So
that would be very confusing,
dude. Yeah. Not the best. But missionally aligned in sales, functionally aligned in marketing, and depending on what brand it is, what the function is, it's going to be one or the other.
So you're a philanthropist. I can't pronounce the name. I'm from Missouri. We don't know how to pronounce names down there. I was born in Arkansas, but grew up in Missouri. So why are you so passionate about that?
Oh, good question, man. So honestly, and this is another thing too. It's like when we talk about, is your vision worthy of people enduring hardship to accomplish it, right? And I mean, first off, dude, it's just like something God's blessed me a ton.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's anything more empowering or amazing than being able to go to, like, for instance, go to Cambodia, you build an orphanage, right? There's a kid that literally is 6 years old, he's on the street. No one's taking care of that kid. That kid's trashed everyone else, right? Yeah. And you can give him a home and it's like basically nothing. You can build an orphanage in Cambodia for like 150 grand.
That's crazy.
Right? And it's 50 kids off the street.
That's crazy.
And so, like we talk about investing money and you want to see an investment, you want to see a return. Yeah. Well, when you do, like some guys are like, I'm gonna save my money, invest, and then I'll be able to give more later.
Sure.
And it's like, with that, like you have to look at helping people the same way, because that kid that's 6, if he's in an orphanage and he gets raised well, right, he gets loved on, well, you get a return on that investment too, because you get that kid, you get his family in the future.
It's for generations to come.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And so, but if you don't put the money now, that kid's on the street.
It's like the butterfly effect, right? If you've ever seen that show, it's like, we even say that to salespeople, like, look, you acquire the right skills, you go out and do 2 to 3 times the sales you are now. That doesn't just affect you and your livelihood, it affects your family's livelihood, it affects your children that are watching you. Now you're far more successful, so they start to think differently. Yeah. And then when they become adults and have kids, they're teaching their kids to think differently.
Totally.
And it's like you might be the person in your family that ends that, that poverty line or whatever line they're in. For me and my family, that was me. I was the person that kind of like, Ed Milet talks about like you be the person that you can end it where generations after you like think differently and have more success. And I always say, money doesn't give you happiness, but it does give you more options in life. And without options, you can't go to Cambodia and build an orphanage to help those kids. You can't donate to your church or your community or whatever, your charities. So money can be used in a good way because it just gives you more options. You have more time freedom. Things like that. Any last words of advice you'd give to anybody out there who's watching about staying committed to whatever they're trying to get to, like their vision? How have you stayed so committed to yours?
Oh, well, thank you, man. I think a big thing is a lot of people just need encouragement. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people, honestly, though, like, okay, sure. There's a little bit of, like, are you smart? Are you charismatic?
Yeah.
Whatever, right? But more than anything, like people fail because they just stopped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they just stopped. Or they didn't, or I will say another thing is like they didn't have the vision totally fleshed out. Like the best CEOs, when they cast vision, okay,
Yeah.
so like a lot of people think casting vision is a mission statement.
Yeah.
And that's not vision.
That's
right?
like surface level.
That's super surface level.
Yeah.
A vision is like, let me feel it, taste it, smell it, touch it. Like, describe what this is going to look like when we accomplish the goal, right?
Yeah.
Where's the line in the sand?
Yeah.
And we need that for ourselves too, right? And so that would be one thing I would encourage people. Like, God's placed a plan and a purpose on your heart. The reason why you desire what you desire is probably because he put that there as a purpose, right?
I think he gives you talents, right? But it's up to you to develop those talents and to do something. And most people get afraid and they bury the talent in the sand. And then I think one day we all have an accountability standing before God's face where it's like, hey, what did you do with that gate?
Totally, right?
Did you did you grow it, or did you like bury it and run the other way?
Yeah, exactly, man. So anyhow, so my encouragement would just be like, if you are watching this, you're probably watching it because something's placed inside of you where you're like, hey, this is what I want. I know that I'm supposed to be here. I know that I'm supposed to get there. And I would have faith in that and then work really hard because that's what I
always teach salespeople. It's like, look, because we have salespeople that come to us like, hey, I've been in sales for 1 year, thinking about starting my own business in this. And I'm like, you can, but do you really have the experience and the expertise and knowledge to do that yet?
Yeah.
Now, if you can say yes, go for it. If you can honestly say yes, to me, I would want them to stay in sales longer to gain more of that experience of communication and be around the business owners more because they're going to learn more. And I always say, successful people learn from their mistakes. Yeah. But I believe that the ultra successful, the ones who have success far quicker, are the ones who don't really learn from their mistakes. They actually learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah. So they don't make the same mistakes themselves. Totally. So they're always learning from other people's mistakes so they don't actually fail themselves. Because there's a big failure culture, I think, out there where it's like, oh, it's good to fail, you got to fail. And I understand where they're coming from. But I'm like, what causes failure? In my mind, what causes failure is a lack of skill set and a lack of commitment. Yep. Those two things. If I'm committed, I'm going to develop the right skill sets to make it really hard for me to fail, right? Yeah, love that. If you want to be a successful CEO, you want to go out and actually learn from successful CEOs. Yeah. You need to be buying their courses. You need to go to seminars, because if you learn what they learn, their knowledge, it's really, really hard to fail. Yeah. You don't have the knowledge, way easier to fail because you don't know what you don't know. Totally. So I agree. Now, where can they find out about, I'd like, the salespeople watching or entrepreneurs, or it could be even, if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company watching or listening to us right now, where can they go to learn more about maybe real estate investing and education on how to do that the right way? Yeah. So we have, Pace has got a website. Okay. So Pace is the partner we have in Subto that we talked about. It's just called Pace Gives Back. Pace Gives Back, PACEgivesback.com? Yep. Yeah, exactly. And there's a bunch of free resources on there. Yeah. But probably some. And Pace is a good dude. I'm a short-term investor with him as well. I give him money, and 90 days later he gives it back with some interest on it. So for some short-term stuff, I'm like, hey, it's actually a good deal. Thanks, Pace. So, hey, thanks for being on the show. From what I understand, we're starting to train your salespeople now or something. Yes, indeed. Yeah, that was fun. We kind of went in there and did a little beginner workshop, and now they're starting to go through the portals and stuff. Everyone was blown away. Okay, we made like an extra $1 million the next week. So you did not. It probably wasn't an extra $1 million. Did you really? People were pumped. Just from that little workshop? I'm just saying, dude. That was a basic workshop. Pretty impactful, guys. We got it. Yeah, once they're in the portal and they start learning every day, it'll start going to the next level. All right, everybody, make sure you go to pacegivesback.com. and get the free resources there. If you want more information, you can always hit up Josiah or Pace or their team after that if you want to get more education in real estate. And if you're a salesperson, best place to follow me for training and content, if you're not one of our clients yet, is just follow me on Jeremy Lee Minor, M-I-N-E-R. That's my verified account with IG. If you want, obviously, more advanced training than basic reels, just message us directly and somebody can reach out to you. Thanks. Cool. Josiah in here. And the room has finally cooled down a little bit. It's not so hot. Yeah, it's way better. In this room in Cancun. I don't know how people live here full time. All right, bro. Pleasure. Appreciate you being on. Pleasure, man. Okay, that's a wrap.